Welcome in to the Just Basketball Show for Monday, September 11th. I'm Chris Manning. That is Brendon Kleen. Want to tell you first to follow us on your podcast platform of choice, 5-star reviews only. Hit subscribe on our YouTube channel, the Just Basketball Fans YouTube channel. And want to remind you about our friends at Homage. Homage is an ultra-comfortable specialty apparel company with NBA licenses that uses vintage-inspired designs to pay homage to the greatest stories, traditions, and figures across sports, music, and pop culture. Use the link below to make your purchase and support the Just Basketball Show. We have a fun one today. It's a little bit of all over the place season previews as we continue through our series talking about all 30 NBA teams. You may have noticed if you're a regular listener, or if not, I'm going to give you a warning. We are skipping for now the Portland Trailblazers because there's a certain guard who also is a rapper who wants to go to the Miami Heat who has not been traded yet, and it feels weird to do that season preview, I would say, Brendan, until we know what's going on with Damian Lillard.
Did you see that NBA 2K recorded commentary about the trade, and they put it into the current version of the game? They forgot to, hold it back. This was going viral yesterday because the game came out, and if you play as Miami or if you play as Portland, it's just like that preloaded, it just kind of the canned analysis that the guys will give while you're playing. They're like, Dame just knew at the end of the day the only place he wanted to be was the Miami Heat, or those dumb little comments, and there's 5 of them that are in part of that package when you play as those two teams. So conspiracy theories are flying, but we're going to withhold our analysis for now.
My advice to the 2K company would be to hire someone whose only job is to listen to all the audio stuff and flag things like that. You could pay them $80,000 a year. You're going to make your money back and give them good benefits and let them work remote. And
I think somebody from the league office probably placed a call last night, let's say.
Yes. So we're going to talk today in our episode wrapping up FIBA. We're going to talk about the Charlotte Hornets and the Jazz in preview. And we got 2 WNBA extensions, which I think are interesting for different reasons because these are the 2 teams that signed their players. 2 extensions are at, I think, very different phases of what they're trying to accomplish right now. But to start with FIBA, Brendan.
Okay.
I just want to start here because this ended on Sunday. Mm-hmm. USA loses to Canada in the 3rd place game. They finished 4th in the World Cup, beating their performance in the last World Cup, but I think certainly feels like a disappointment still for what I think is the most talented team in the tournament. Michael Pina wrote a good piece about Team USA at The Ringer that I'd recommend people go read if you're interested in this. But here's what I want to spin this forward. Do you have concerns, or do you have more concerns, or do you have more optimism for 2024 in Paris when we think about Team USA?
The same. I mean, I think we've always known that these World Cups are a big risk. I saw a stat that with the way that we handle it as a country, I saw a stat that we've now failed to medal in 2 consecutive World Cups for the first time since we started sending pros in 1994.
And we're really good as a country medaling in things on a variety of fronts. So that's disappointing.
Yeah. So
yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so 7th and then 4th, I think, is our performance back-to-back.
Yes.
So, yeah, I guess it's a down point. I guess it's a nadir. But judging from what this roster looked like, the weaknesses that were obvious and then reared their heads when it comes to shot selection, size, rebounding, interior defense, things like that, I don't think this makes me feel differently than I even felt going in. I think this is a decent result. I think losing to Germany the way that they did felt a little disappointing because I feel like that matchup was not one I was necessarily worried about. So that kind of sucked. And individual players disappointed me, whether that's Jaren, Jalen Brunson even, obviously Brandon Ingram, who we've talked about. But this team's going to look radically different next year. So when you just ask me about the Olympics, we usually get our act together by then.
I went back and looked, Brendan, at the 2014 World Cup team that won the last time the USA medaled in the World Cup. I'm going to run through this roster. It's kind of an interesting... It's an interesting roster in retrospect, is what I will say. I don't know if you've looked at this at all.
No.
It's Curry, Clay, Derrick Rose, who was 25 at the time. How time has changed for Derrick Rose.
So this was after a couple of the injuries. for Derrick Rose.
Yes,
yeah.
but yes. Tibbs, by the way, was an assistant on this team with Jim Boeheim, Monty Williams, and Coach K was the head coach.
Okay. Nice little crew
real different
there.
vibe. Yeah. Real different vibes now. Probably a little less intense now, even with Spo, I would say, just with Tibbs and Boeheim. Yeah. Kenneth Fareed, who was 24 at the time. Rudy Gay, who was 28, the oldest guy in the team. DeMar DeRozan, Kyrie, Mason Plumlee, DeMarcus Cousins, James Harden, Anthony Davis, and Andre Drummond.
It's a lot of talent.
It's a lot of talent, but aside from like Clay and Curry and Kyrie from a talent, like you and Harden and AD, like you have some like insanely high talent there. But you also do have like some real randomness, and like it's a weird roster when you look at positions. If you just think about that positionally for a second, like it's weird. I don't think that roster in some ways is that different in terms of like quality from what you got at this World Cup with some maybe like Curry obviously all time better than anyone that's on.
Yeah, but
this
back
roster
then,
now.
he hadn't even won his first MVP yet.
Correct. He was 26, hadn't had like the leap to him being Steph and all that stuff, hadn't shut down the league in that way. Like, I mean, honestly, at the time, if you had been like, hey, Kyrie's the most like important guard on this team, that wouldn't have been like the most insane take in the world, considering he was year 3 and year 4.
That's the part though that I would probably say is different is this team, the more we watched it, had fewer guys who could break down the defense off the dribble than I think we would have guessed.
Thought?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair.
That's
fair.
the part that I think after watching it that maybe I would say concern me, but I mean, these guys are never going to play together again. So after today, I don't really care how they fit, but I guess about them individually as we look forward, guys like Austin Reeves or Jalen Brunson or whoever, Mikal Bridges for that matter, that did surprise me. And that roster that you're talking about had a lot more guys who could do that. And it's like, even a version of the Team USA offense that's just a lot of drive and kick and high pick and roll stuff would have been more dynamic than what we got in this tournament, which ended up being transitions and ISOs. That was effectively what we were getting.
Also should note that this was the summer where Paul George had his leg fracture.
Yeah.
So that was the small forward hole in that team, and you can go on the Wikipedia page and read some of the names that were there and have not. Here's the point that I think is kind of interesting when you think about this going forward. On that team, you had guys that came over that were on the 2010 championship team. Curry, Rose, and Gay were on the 2010 team. Coming from the 2012 Olympic gold medal team was Harden and AD.
Which AD, kinda.
Okay, but like
he was the
there,
Walker Kessler
right?
or whatever, yeah. Like he wasn't really on
Yes, okay. But you had some continuity in terms of guys being in the program, guys being around it. I think like there's that, we've talked about this, I think, ad nauseum during the World Cup. I think that is still kind of missing here, and I'm curious to see like if even if these guys didn't win at the highest level they wouldn't want to. I do think it would behoove the program as it exists to maybe have like 2-3 guys from this roster in Paris next summer. Like AD, I think like Ant, Halliburton, Paolo.
It's going to be Paolo, I think. But you were saying Jaren. You think he should stay to try to build some continuity and give them some size and whatnot.
Jaren is a yes to me on if 2 things happen. Number one, you could just have injuries, and I think like that center is kind of a tricky spot where you might not have perfect options, and I would rather take him than like a Plumlee or like Nick Claxton
Kessler
or something, I think. Right. I would rather take Jaren than those guys. 2, you don't know if you're getting Embiid. And even if, let's say, Embiid says at media day in a month, I want to play for Team USA, that's my plan, you can't assume that Joel Embiid is going to be healthy next summer.
Or that he'll maintain his perspective. I mean, let's say next summer he has just asked for a trade out of Philadelphia or is coming off of maybe he finally has a breakthrough in the postseason and he goes to the finals. Like, all these things could change what he wants to do.
Yeah, and that opens the door, I think, for Jaren to be back. I think depending on what happens with like Evan Mobley, that opens the door for someone like that to jump in here. But it's like that's the spot where I think you could have some stuff that doesn't feel perfect. And that's how I think Jaren, even if he was not great at this World Cup and struggled, I do think there's like a path where he could absolutely still be playing in Paris. But if I had to say like the 2 guys, I think it's most likely it's probably Paolo and Ant. I think those are the 2 that I would bet the farm on if I was going to say who is going to be on the Olympic team next summer.
Sure. I'll just, parting thought, say there was some discussion over did you see this? The Steve Kerr stuff. This was very Twitter, but Steve Kerr's not the issue. The structure and system are the issue. If Steve Kerr fails at next year's Olympics, slaughter him. Rhetorically, right? Like,
yeah,
to rip him apart because he'll have his full talent. He'll have had another, camp into another full tournament and more work with these guys, built better relationships, etc. But I'm not going to blame it on the coach. And Grant Hill, first year, I think there is something to be said for him choosing to start fresh, right? Like picking all first-time representatives. Maybe it was a little optical, like I'm going to make my mark, and maybe, there is some criticism you could put on him for that, but going young and trying to start fresh after the Colangelo era, I don't think I would fault Grant Hill for approaching it that way, as long as, like you just said, he builds forward with some of the guys that he just established that tie with. If he just has a whole new roster in Paris, that would be a little strange. I don't think that'll happen, but I think it's now, okay, that was your first try. You got fourth. It was a little disappointing. How do you kind of go forward, and what's the Grant Hill era for Team USA going to be?
Yeah, curious to see what kind of veteran presence there is next summer too. I mean, we have LeBron posting cryptic things on Instagram.
If we had time, that would have been slop of the week.
Yeah, I mean, look, that's honestly, from a historical standpoint, I do kind of want to see it. I don't know if
absolutely.
Really,
I mean, of course. It's just
I want to see
he's a goober is all,
Yes, he's the it's in my opinion the best player that has ever played basketball, and he's an absolute goober. All right, let's a couple other quick FIBA things that I think there's a couple things we can hit on. I just want to shout out Canada, like amazing job by Canada to get third place. SGA to me was maybe my favorite guy to watch in this tournament. And then the way they cap it off, Team USA, like what, I haven't seen comments about like what they thought about their energy for that game or whatever, but Canada was the team that really took it to them. And Dylan Brooks comes out, plays his best game of the tournament, arguably, and has the biggest amount of points, and shines in this really big way for country. And you push this ahead to the Olympics. Mm-hmm. Hopefully get Jamal Murray in there. Hopefully get Andrew Wiggins in there. This team's a legitimate medal threat for Paris. That's really cool. Canada basketball is here. It's on the up. This is their moment. I think this is going to be something they look back on and say this is a real boon for their program, and I can't wait to see them in the Olympics next summer.
Do you think Paolo, Jaren, and Ingram were actually sick?
I think Ingram, it seems like Ingram was, and I'm going to say yes because I'm going to be kind, but look, I'm sure there's some. You said this on the last episode, and this is a good shout because this is how this works. I'm sure there were some very high profile agents calling Grant Hill, being like, "Hey, I don't care about the bronze medal. It doesn't give my guy any rub if he wins the bronze medal for Team USA. Can I just get him healthy to training camp?"
Because of who it is, I would say the only one I have a little bit of about is Jaren Jackson, just because he was so criticized and struggled so in such a high profile way. But no, I think they were all sick. I'm not gonna go there, but it was just sort of convenient in a way. That's
that's gonna be our TikTok cutout. Is just Brendan, just no context of you saying you do believe them, just you questioning it. Sure. And conspiracy. We need some conspiracy alien music behind that. Yeah.
All right, you have a Dylan Brooks thing that you wanted to throw at me.
So he got clowned, obviously, for this boxing thing. Did you see this?
No, I didn't even see the boxing thing. Oh wait, yes I did.
So after he gets ejected, and then he's in the tunnel with boxing gloves, and then Nikola Jovic, after they beat them, is in the hallway doing some shadow boxing. Mm-hmm. This is apparently was the boxing gloves thing was a Canada thing about their mentality and being in the fight, and not just Dylan Brooks being an absolute loon. This was actually a team thing. So I just want to say sometimes you got to just it was very funny to watch people just be on Instagram specifically be mm-hmm. Dylan Brooks, what are we doing here, my guy? But usually there's a little more context to some of these things, and I think that was notable. And even though I'm still a Dylan Brooks skeptic.
Sure. I mean, skeptic to mentality, whatever, I guess, but I do think this tournament was cool. 39 points is crazy, and it wasn't even a lot of threes. It was only, I think, 5 of 10 from deep, so he really was actually, getting buckets out there. But,
mm-hmm.
I think this tournament was a cool reminder, especially the Slovenia game. The dude's one of the best perimeter defenders in basketball. Like, it just is what it is. You can laugh at him. You can think whatever. I mean, his shot selection at times is downright awful. He needs to shoot better if he's going to be, we both, I think, had him in our best lineups for Houston last week, but he needs to make shots for that to happen, and he needs to make the right types of shots. But defensively, like, he's crazy good, He's on a team with Lou Dort and might be the best defender on that team. Like that's saying something. So I guess just like kind of let's pump the brakes on that. Maybe it wasn't worth his contract. Memphis had their issues. I get all of it, but like he's going to play in China or he's going to get the minimum or even he's going to get the mid-level. Like let's just kind of cool off on all that. Real quick.
Just to set the scene, Paris 2024 gold medal game. Mm-hmm. I poke Bears too.
Love it. Let's do it. After the Grizzlies win the championship. Oh, wait, no, he's not on the Grizzlies anymore. The Rockets win the championship.
But
Franz Wagner, I want to shout out real quick. We're going to talk about him more soon because we're doing our Magic preview, I think, in the next episode, right? So,
yes.
But just a perfect FIBA player was really all I wanted to say. Like, just watching Bogdan Bogdanovic, and then I'm like, Evan Fournier. Like, there's just that lineage of guys who feel like they have a better command of the court, little bit of a shorter three-point line, little bit of a slower pace game, and their pull-up three-point shooting ability and size is just kind of a cheat code in this environment. And then as long as they're unselfish and kind of make the right play and have a good team around them, they're just going to be great. But, I mean, Dennis Schroeder, FIBA World Cup MVP. Did you have your bet placed? What were those odds heading in? Like plus 2,000? I don't even think we said his name when we were talking through MVP candidates on the preview.
Look, just what a guy,
It's always a point guard. We should have at least. I think in retrospect we should have thought of him when we were talking because it's always that guy. Ricky Rubio won it in the last one.
Should we nuke the Raptors over now? Is now my question.
No, I don't think so. Okay. Although Maxi Kleber, big L. Remember their beef pre-tournament, and he basically told Maxi you're not coming to the Philippines with us or wherever their group stage was, and then Dennis was right.
He runs the German basketball program. What a world we live in. He knows all the doctors that LeBron is maybe talking to, and he runs the German basketball program.
Just an international. He's the World Wide West of international hoops, is what it seems like. Just connecting.
Specifically German hoops. I think I don't want to give him internet. I think it's German basketball.
Okay. That's fair.
Do you think he wears lederhosen like Bayern Munich? Do you think Dennis Schroeder's ever worn lederhosen like they make Bayern Munich players wear for photo shoots?
I don't know how much time he's spending in Germany outside of when he has to be there. It seems like he's here.
LA guy. Yeah.
But
that's a good point. All right. Well, let's move on to the WNBA. We got 2 extensions. Jewell Loyd has signed a Supermax in year 1. It's slightly below it in year 2 with the Seattle Storm. Obviously, a team in the midst of a rebuild and a reset with the retirement of Sue Bird and Brianna Stewart going to Brooklyn. And then you have Betnijah Laney signing an extension through 2025 with the New York Liberty. You outlined this in our notes. This deal is going to give them about $680,000.
Maybe.
Which,
we don't know what her contract details are. It hasn't been reported yet, but if she were to get a slight bump from what she's making this year or around the same as what she's making this year, then they have about $680K left under the cap to sign, the hard cap in the W for people who may not know, to sign Jonquel Jones, Brianna Stewart, and fill out the rest of their entire roster, which is 4 to 5 more players on top of that. So they're kind of up against it because they also extended Sabrina Ionescu mid-season. So you do this, of course, Betnijah Laney is the best 3-and-D player in the WNBA, so you have to have her to continue to win. She's irreplaceable on their team, but Stewie going to take another pay cut? What's Jonquel Jones thinking? It's going to be interesting for them.
Yeah, I think you're going to see them and the Aces as these two kind of big teams have this issue. We saw that with the Aces this year. They had someone out for legal reasons and then Candace Parker out for injury reasons, and you saw some real holes in the roster. That easily could be the Liberty in a year if the injury luck breaks a certain way. Courtney Vandersloot's a year old. All these things could break a certain way, and then you're in some trouble. It's also a reminder that, I think eventually, hopefully, in the near future, we do see some more spending power. A lot of the teams in the W, I think it would make a really big difference to raise the quality of some of these teams and give them some more flexibility. I have more. Brendan, I guess I'm more interested in the Laney one just because I think there's two reasons for that. Number one, it's reinforcing everything you said on this team doing what it needs to do to keep the real reason, the core of what it is that's going to work as long as Stewie's there and in her prime. Secondly, just Laney getting this extension after, if people don't know, a couple years ago she was released, then went to I think Atlanta and won the Most Improved Player of the Year award, and then ends up in New York. She had she in the bubble. She was at a spot where it wasn't like her career was in a weird place. Mm-hmm. A lot of players in that spot just end up washing out of the league, and instead she's now doing very well for herself financially, has found a real home in New York, and that is just a really cool story on a team that is loaded with former MVPs and college icons and has all this wattage. She's like a really kind of different kind of angle to that.
Well, and to your point, which is a really easy easy place to end up going when you're talking about contracts in the W is like roster sizes, money, all that stuff. She's an example
expansion.
And she's an example of what happens when a player overcomes all that, right? Like she wasn't even a lock to make the Atlanta Dream heading into the bubble. She makes the team, she becomes an all-star. They don't obviously have an all-star game, and then Most Improved, and then goes to New York, breaks out in an even bigger way. She's shooting 40% from deep this year. Really, really versatile, switchable, strong, functional defender, and irreplaceable to their roster, like we said. So those are the cool stories that you get. You wouldn't like to have that. There's obviously the same thing in every sport. I think it's more extreme in the W, but you also have to tip your hat, as much as you can talk about the problems. It's like, well, and then some players kind of break through all that, and she's a really good example of it. But yeah, I'm fascinated by what this roster looks like going forward, and they're not going to be able to add a bunch of difference makers beyond this. It's going to be retaining what they have and, just taking this window as far as it can go. There will eventually be, I think, a little bit of a shuffling of who handles the ball once Courtney Vandersloot. I would imagine she'll contemplate retirement after next year when her contract with New York is up. Maybe not. I don't know. But that's fascinating. Let's jump to Jewell, though, because she also broke the all-time points in a season record this week, which we had flagged at one point in our things to watch down the stretch that the league's season has elongated, so it's kind of like the NFL where these records are going to fall, but still an incredible accomplishment going into a season where people had, I would say, pretty low expectations for her and the team. The last time she had a lot of injuries and depleted roster around her, she was very inefficient, not a great season for her, and she has made improvements to her game into her late prime that allowed her to dominate on a young rebuilding roster. Like, that's very, very cool. And then to recommit to a city that everybody else abandoned last year, and kind of decide to be like, I'm going to be here for probably forever, I think we would assume, or at least, the rest of her prime, and be the centerpiece of what this team's going to be in its next iteration. That's what we always say we want out of these athletes, right? And she's doing it. So continuing to dominate and being loyal and being a good teammate and a great person from all indications, like she's kind of everything you would want. And salute to her for an awesome season and a bag.
The Storm will be well positioned to reload with Jewell, Loyd, and then whatever draft pick they have coming. Like, they're going to be in a really good spot to turn this around quickly, it feels like to me. And I think everything you said is correct. It's a matter of, who do they get, just how does the rest of the roster kind of shape out. But I feel like they're in a really good spot with Jewell, Loyd, and whomever they get, Beckers, Caitlin Clark, whomever, Angel Reese, whomever, Cameron Brink, and turn this over very quickly to be maybe not a contender again right away, but competitive in a way they definitely were not this year.
Yeah, for sure. I kind of like the Beckers fit with Jewell personally, just being a little bigger, having more of a playmaking bent to her game. Not that Caitlin Clark is not a great passer, but I think Becker's natural inclination is to kind of get off it and then get it back later in a possession and kind of score and attack a rotating defense, that type of thing. So that would be fun, but you're right. Whoever they get, I think they'll be on their way. The last note on this, to me, would just be with these two contracts, 2024 free agency was set up to be pretty awesome. These two, I had kind of penciled in as like they could maybe change teams because of some of the factors we're talking about. Bad Seattle team rebuilding. New York, can they keep everybody? Well, they both are going to stay. So that takes a couple of the bigger potential free agents off the table. There's a lot on here. We already talked about Stewie and Jonquel Jones, who I don't expect to change teams. Lena Deladon, Brianna Jones, DeWanna Bonner. These are all names that are technically free agents, but I expect to be back with their teams because of their kind of circumstances. But to me, that leaves Skylar Diggins-Smith, who I didn't intentionally wear the shirt for, but we have it anyway, and Clea Copper, who I think are probably the next. Skylar Diggins-Smith will change teams. We don't have to wonder there. She does not seem to be getting along with my city's NBA and WNBA franchises. And then Clea Copper, I'm not trying to cast shade, but the Sky lost everybody but her last summer or last offseason, so wouldn't be the biggest surprise if she was were to follow them. So those would probably be the two I would have circled, but, this league's kind of crazy. Anything can happen because of the hard cap and everything else.
Yeah, heading to, I think, an interesting summer on a bunch of fronts in the W that will all get primed up by the.
We have that habit as basketball fans. We say summer, but it's technically winter.
Sure,
I just did it too, and then I feel like I made you do it. Technically,
well, it's like you get
it's the off season, but it's not the summer.
Yeah, winter, and then like the draft.
Spring.
Sign me up for just a very fun run on that front. All right, let's move on to our team previews. Let's start with the Charlotte Hornets, Brendon. A team last year that, look, I'm not going to say I had a great time always watching the Charlotte Hornets, and some of that is because my most important player barely played last year, and that's LaMelo Ball. He gets the extension. He's got the keys to the franchise. I don't really know if I believe that this team this year is the right setting for us to learn all about him and exactly what he is as a league guy, because I still think this team is kind of bad. But he's their most likely bet at a superstar. I think that is very clear that LaMelo Ball is the clearest path the Hornets have to having a guy that can actually define the franchise.
LaMelo Ball is a superstar.
Okay, I agree with you, but just to play devil's advocate, bad defender, a little I think there's just like a little bit of like I don't.
We have to debate here. You're a very agreeable person, Chris, by nature, I think, but we disagree about LaMelo Ball, and we just need to hash it out. This is just we've talked around LaMelo quite a bit over the course of the podcast, and now we're here. It's the Hornets preview. Okay. I think you don't believe in him, and I fully do.
I don't. So look, I am agreeable. I would also call that being from the Midwest is what I would say.
Okay.
It's just what I would say. I am a LaMelo Ball skeptic because I think there are times where he utterly transcends. There's other times where I think he's just like the chaos factor, the creation factor. It just like doesn't do. It's not just doesn't always feel conducive. It feels like a little too much flash for being like exactly what I kind of want as a league creator. It's not as careful as we're like. And I understand he's got good size, and I don't think he's as bad as a defender as he was as like a rookie, because like no one is ever as bad usually defensive as they are as a rookie, because you just like grow up and whatnot. I just don't think he's like an impact. I don't think he's an impact defender. I don't think he's like last year, advanced stat wise, just as part of my argument here, that was the worst he's rated out as an estimated plus minus as a defender last year.
Defensively, if we want to just start there, he gives me his second effort bad. He doesn't.
Yes.
He'll fight through a screen, but if the guy gets a dribble past him, it's
done. It's done. And that's
if he's supposed to be helping, but the guard is kind of already has like a head of steam. Like he's not going to take a charge from the strong side. He's not going to try to rip out for a steal. But when I watch him and I imagine what a good version of Charlotte is going to be, which now that Michael Jordan's gone, maybe they can actually build that. We'll see. A good version of that team with more structure, more well-fitting pieces, especially on the defensive end. Bigger, hopefully, not Terry Rozier and PJ Washington and some of those undersized guys. I see a guy who can, maybe he's guarding the third or fourth best player most nights, but who can be a solid team defender and use his size to make an impact. Like, is he a better or worse defender than Tyrese Halliburton?
I would say this might just be reputation. I think I would prefer Hallie as a defender. I think we've seen more when
I think they're
Hallie
pretty similar.
I think Hallie probably has taken like a little bit of a step back because that's what you do when you become like the lead guy, right? Like, and I think that's like that we've seen that irregardless of position, that when you spend so much energy on offense, you do spend less energy on defense. That's just like a thing. Mm-hmm. I think Halliburton was a little bit better before he kind of ended up like I think
college.
There was some real problem in college. Yeah, I think the projection of him to me is still better. I just want to see LaMelo like do some of the stuff you're saying. Like, I mean, look, he has like as a point of comparison.
But why would he not? I mean, if he has the instincts and it's just an effort thing, why would he? If he's on a team that's not like though. Dog shit, why would he not?
It's just some guys. I need to see it personally.
So Halliburton doing it at Iowa State makes you feel like it's going to happen. But
I think you saw him do it a little. I think you saw him do stuff at a little bit of a better level than you did like with LaMelo Ball in Charlotte, and that's somewhat on the Charlotte organization. Mm-hmm. I think that is on the Hornets organization for not like making it incentivized for LaMelo Ball to try. Like, okay, here's this thing. Here's what I'll say as a point of comparison. Darius Garland is like. His upside, because he's smaller on both ends of the floor, is lower than LaMelo Ball's.
Yeah.
Right? Because he's like 6'1", and he's never going to be as like beefy as LaMelo could be if he adds muscle and stuff. And he can't like switch in the way LaMelo might be able to if he hits some version of himself, right? Like, I actually would really like to see what it would look like if LaMelo like had to switch a bunch. I think that would be fascinating, just because that tells you a lot about effort and motor on that end. I think they
switch, but it was so broken that it's the kind of switching where it's like.
Yeah,
and then the guy scored. You know, like that. Yeah, it's not. They switched and then they clamped down. It was not that.
I want switching on like in a real team that is functioning, which like the roster is a little bit more conducive to that this year, but it's not all the way there. I've seen Darius like at least put in like the effort on all the stuff you're talking about that LaMelo doesn't do, and some of that is the team got better. Some of that is like the head coach situation in Cleveland worked out in a certain way that JB Bickerstaff like got that out of them. All of these things kind of coalesce. They also have Evan Mobley and Jared Allen, which I think super duper makes you look better when you're a guard like that. Mm-hmm. But I've seen like Darius do that stuff and play in a way that is like really feeding into an ecosystem. There are times where I think LaMelo, partly because of the organization and the players around him, I don't think has always played into an ecosystem in the way that I think his skills are going. So I am just a skeptic at this point in his career. It's only year 3. He's really young. It's been an awful organization. All that is fair. I am just somewhat of a LaMelo Ball skeptic at this point.
Yeah. Heading into year 4, I think, to me, I still don't see the case for anything besides believing in LaMelo Ball. I think he's still up there with Cade Cunningham as the best version of this new generation of kind of unselfish, like run-and-gun point guards that includes Garland, Halliburton, Josh Giddey, and then Cade and LaMelo. There might be others I'm forgetting. But I think LaMelo still has a clear path to being the best of all those guys. I think the chaotic good of kind of what he does on offense, I see as a plus. I think he actually can play off ball, and I really wish that they had drafted Scoot Henderson because I think that's part of what makes LaMelo Ball special. I think he actually...
I agree with that. That we are in agreement. I think Scoot on this team over Brandon Miller, sign me up.
Yeah, well, I knew we agreed on that, but...
no, but like on this team specifically, I would rather see that to play the LaMelo like in a more combo situation in the off-ball stuff.
Mm-hmm. He's
and, like,
comfortable.
Honestly, that is it. Yeah,
he's comfortable taking spot-up threes. You know, I think he actually came off of screens and ran dribble handoff. I think that there's just this perception that he is like, set a pick for me at half court. I'm coming downhill and we'll just see what happens.
Yeah, it's not that.
That's not that's not how he plays. You know, and I think he really does, like when he has a real lineup around him with spacing and, you know, a big and everything, like he creates good shots most of the time down the floor, in my opinion. But to your point, like the stats have not really backed up his impact yet. And the shot has come and gone. And there are a lot of things about his game that have to be fleshed out and proven. And again, to your point, I don't know if this is the year that we fully that the roster can bring that out of him better than it has. Because this roster didn't change a ton. They're getting Miles Bridges back, but other than that, it's a lot of the same, and you're hoping that some of the young guys maybe help But, it's Terry Rozier again. It's Gordon Hayward again. It's, I don't even, beyond that, you're already getting to the end of the list of impact players. So maybe this isn't the year that proves my argument, but I still would fully be invested in LaMelo Ball. I mean, not as the team. Of course they have to pay him, but I'm still keeping the stock. I'm not selling it, and I think he is the type of player you can build a great team around.
I am willing to be convinced. I'm a little skeptical, and I really just look to my original point. I don't know if this year is exactly where I feel like I might. This roster is still just weird. Like Boone Knight has been a miss. There's a bunch of rookies on this team. Gordon Hayward is like old, and I don't know if his body works anymore. Mm-hmm. Like I don't really know if Steve Clifford is the right coach for LaMelo Ball. I don't really think that's like the pairing that I kind of want for what LaMelo Ball could be.
Maybe not, right? But you pointed out a minute ago that about the defense that the structure's not there or whatever. I think, and by the end of last year, they were really good defense.
Sure,
they down the stretch clamped down on teams. Now, who was not in the lineup at that point? LaMelo Ball, but I do think if they can stay healthy, then you will see the defense improve this year under Clifford because he has that track record and. Yeah, that's what he does. So I don't really see any reason to believe it won't happen. They're getting, I guess Cody Martin is the one guy they're getting back who we haven't talked about, but I'm getting ahead of myself. So we can finish off on LaMelo, and then I think we have the same preseason hype man.
So is he LaMelo's your most important player?
Yeah. I mean, who else would it be? I mean, you could make the case for Brandon Miller, but I don't think it's going to happen this year. I think it's going to be a pretty rough rookie season for Brandon Miller.
Yeah, I think, and that might be good for him in some ways, but I don't know what that's going to look like. Again, I don't mean that Clifford is like a bad coach. I get why they hired him after James Borrego. Like I understand.
I don't think they should have fired
process.
James Borrego. Is my kind of personal view.
I agree, but if you're going to do that and you hire Steve Clifford, I kind of understand the thought process. I think my thought is, I want someone who is like in sync with LaMelo on offense, or you have an assistant like Mike Brown as Jordy Fernandez in Sacramento that can do creative offensive stuff to like unleash your star guard. That's kind of what I want for LaMelo.
Yeah. I think the hope would be for a coach that maybe this or next year is Clifford's last season, and then the new regime can start to make its imprint and spend some actual money to get smart people in the door. I just think they haven't prioritized that. I mean, you don't really hire, retread Mitch Kupchak and retread Steve Clifford if you're trying to like progressively, imagine a new version of what your team can be,
Bingo. Let's move on to player we'll be talking about at the end of the season.
Yeah.
Brendan, we do have the same player. We realized this when we were texting and prepping. Can you tell the listeners, our viewers, who that is?
Mark Williams, the second-year center. I mean, you mentioned not enjoying watching the Hornets. Agreed. I did see them in person in the second half of the year. I think LaMelo was out, and Mark Williams just popped immediately in person. He's just one of those guys. His combination of, obviously the athleticism, but then you throw in the coordination, the kind of feel. He just moves around on a basketball court at 7 feet tall and understands how to use his body and use his skill set as a rookie who was thought to be fairly raw even coming out of college. To watch a guy with that perception, I was just kind of floored by how differently I felt watching him. And it seems like he's a lot further along with all of those things than you would expect. And if he gets real time and they got rid of Mason Plumlee, if he starts for this team and has a real opportunity here, I think he's going to be one of the breakout players in the league, maybe. Like I really think he has that kind of potential.
I'm in love with Mark Williams as what he could just be. I don't know if he's going to be like an all-star or anything like that, but I think this is one of those centers where it's like, can you just find someone with a late lottery pick at center right now? I think you can if you get a little bit lucky with the draft class and you do some good scouting and all that stuff. He, to me, in watching back some games and watching back some clips, the composed finisher. He's a really good athlete. He has a really nice feel on defense. He has these moments of composure, Brendan, that I don't think you can really teach. He will like maybe get beat on the first action and be slightly out of position, but he doesn't do the thing a lot of young players at every position do, which is freak out and foul. He stays grounded and he waits and then he reacts as the guy actually makes their move. He doesn't overdo it. He's not overzealous. That's huge for a young center who is at the back line of a defense, and particularly a Steve Clifford defense. I think that's really impressive. 65% on twos last year, 70% at the rim. I'm curious to see, how much does he get a little bit bigger, a little bit stronger, and maybe handle some of the behemoths of the league a little bit differently. And to LaMelo's credit, I think Mark Williams with a full season of LaMelo could have like a monster season of efficiency within 4 feet of the rim. I think he could just be like an automatic lob threat in that space with a full season of LaMelo and him playing together.
It's funny, it seems like we've been talking about centers a lot in this spot because we talked about Duren for the Pistons. We talked about Şengün, although I had him as most important for Houston, and then jump into Utah in a second, but going to expose that I have a center there too. And it's just kind of interesting to think about what they have to be and what they are in the modern NBA. But I agree with you on having a real pick and roll partner. I think long term and even this season is a better course of action for what you want with LaMelo than Mason Plumlee was. But
yes,
since you, I think, covered the defense kind of thoroughly there, I would just say offensively, in addition to being that, I actually think he can maybe slide into some of what Plumlee was doing as a DHO guy, as a short roll passer, some of that stuff. Like, I think he has the kind of IQ and feel offensively, Mark Williams, to do that. Good form, confident on his mid-range jumper too. Made a few of those last year that makes you kind of wonder what, maybe not even this season, but could he be somebody who makes corner threes here and there later on, or even just have the ability to, hit a floater, hit a quick jumper, just add another dimension to what the defense has to respect when he does get the ball. But yeah, I mean, you're starting from a place of somebody who reads the game at a really high level and is a freak athlete. Like, that's a starter.
Yeah. The offensive stuff, I think it would be good to start pushing that on him now, because I do think the younger you can expose him to that and give him reps at it now when you're not super worried about how many games you win or making the playoffs and it's not super realistic. I think that's better now. I'd rather him go through that now than try to add it to his game when he's like 26 and you've already paid. Like, I would rather start doing that now with him. And I think, to your point, I think that's another way to just give LaMelo different looks and kind of aid in what makes him really good. I do think there is an element to that. So I'm all for it. And look, Nick Richards isn't a bad backup center either. Like, they're going to have they're going to have good center play for a team that, like, I have some questions, like, and they are going to often play LaMelo and Rozier together, which is not, I think, a particularly stout perimeter guard pairing. I do think that, like, having the centers they do is a good backbone for maybe them not towards some of the defensive improvements last year, and also them not having such a disastrous defensive rating over the course of a full season and a bad net rating like they did last year.
Absolutely. Sorry. I know that, or I like that team when a team has the same type of center. There's a lot of these teams that end up where the backup, it just plays incredibly differently because there's so many different types of centers in the league in 2023. But I don't love when it's like Plumlee and then Mark Williams. It's like you're changing everything kind of about how you play to have Williams and Richards now. And I think Richards may start, if I'm being honest, because he just kind of has the experience advantage and they just paid him. I think they obviously like him, and maybe they'll just feel, especially an old-fashioned coach like, Steve Clifford might just feel a little more comfortable with that, at least, opening night. I mean, maybe not by February, but either way, the continuity
Nick Richards
is going to be good there.
You get Nick Richards did get
$5
a contract,
million.
but he got $5 million a year.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, like, Williams got a lot of DNPs last year. We're not talking about a guy who just like immediately just blew up everything about what the Hornets were expecting of him. I think that they're still trying to bring him along, so we'll see. But either way, the continuity of the skill set and the style of both of those guys, I think, will help too. What's your best lineup?
43 games for Mark Williams as a rookie. Yeah. That's under 20 minutes a game. So there definitely is some projections on our part, which we're doing our job. All right, best lineup: LaMelo Ball, Terry Rozier, PJ Washington, Miles Bridges, Mark Williams. You could put Hayward in here, I guess, if you wanted to, just for like a a bigger body scoring type in place of, I would say, Washington. But I'm going to put 3 defenders at the bigger forwards at the floor up front. I think Washington can kind of, and Williams as the defensive pairing can be awesome. Miles Bridges was accused and all of that of some very heinous things. As a basketball player, he's good, so he's going to be on the floor. Like, he's back, and there's kind of an uncomfortability about that. I get that, but he's going to be there. But to me, the lineup, it's LaMelo. He's your lead creator. Rozier, secondary guy, can really get hot and torch teams. You have Washington there to be kind of your defensive wing, switchy kind of guy, takes on the biggest assignment you have every night. Bridges there to dunk. Bridges there to shoot a little bit, to be dynamic in a way. And we know what the LaMelo Bridges lob pairing can be. We've seen that a ton. And then Mark Williams at center. Maybe Nick Richards is technically better this year, but I want to have Williams there and let him grow with this group.
I love it. It's very similar to what I have. I want to, with these previews, the past couple, I had the best lineup from last year in my notes and kind of forgot to say it, so we should go over that as a point of comparison. But in this case, the team had so many injuries and problems that we'll start it with Utah. But I think everything you said makes sense. My best lineup for the 2023-24 Charlotte Hornets, I'm going big. LaMelo Ball. I have Gordon Hayward at the 2. A lot of the lineups that did succeed last year for this team were big. Rozier might have been on the court, but he was smaller. Hayward is going to give you playmaking. He's going to give you shooting. He's going to give you IQ. Defense is good enough. Miles Bridges, there may be some rust. There may be some criticism, and he may have to handle that. Don't really care, but he's a good player. If he's out there, he's going to make an impact. PJ Washington, I believe in. I think with Steve Clifford's take away the paint style defensively on the backside, they might use Mark Williams, who is my center in this lineup, to kind of muck things up, go out on the perimeter more, hedge, blitz. But PJ's length and size and IQ, I think, will really help there, and that's part of why I like the size overall. So that lineup gives you spacing, playmaking at every position, and enough length and size on defense that I hope it can be passable. But if that lineup stays healthy, this team's going to be good. And that might give away my over-under a little bit. But I think that 5, plus you still have Rozier and Cody Martin, some other guys, like, it's not a bad top 7, 8, 9 when you really think about it.
Yeah, 100% agree. Okay, let's now go to best case. Brendan, for me, the best case is pretty simple. LaMelo Ball ascends in a big way. Mm-hmm. Miller is competent / good as a rookie, someone looks like they can build with. And Mark Williams does take the step forward we've kind of outlined here, and you feel really good about him going into his 3rd season. You feel like those 3 guys as the backbone of your young core, that's what this is about. You maybe get some more wins than you expect because of some of the veterans you have, but this is the way here. It's the young guys proving they're good and worth it, and that, like, whatever's coming here, you have those 3 guys as kind of your 10-piece, and then maybe you can also turn some of these veterans into assets to play around with and give yourself some more flexibility.
Little Din Djarin there. This is the way. I liked it. I saw a Halloween costume yesterday at Target that was Grogu, but you literally just put the entire ball carriage over your whole body, and there's no head hole. That was the costume. And I'm like, Target usually is not like doing like goofy costumes, like joke costumes, but I was like, I really feel for anybody who actually tries to wear this and just like passes out from not being able to breathe. Anyway, my best case.
I'll do an episode in that outfit for if we record on Halloween. If we get to 2,000 subscribers by Halloween, I'll go buy that, and then
you set the number high enough where you know you're not going to have to do that. That was very smart of you. All right, best case. I have the young centers keep developing. The offense returns to the heights of 2 years ago, even with James Borrego gone. They were the number 6 offense the year that Borrego got fired. They were 43-39, had the number 6 offense in the NBA, and Michael Jordan was like, hasta la vista, James. It's over. And then if all that happens, I would say Charlotte hosts a play-in game, like 7-8 seed.
Okay, that's interesting.
Worst case.
I don't know if I'm quite that high in them, but I think that's interesting. So I think the worst case is about the young guys. Is Miller just like a lost puppy who doesn't do anything positive as a rookie, and meanwhile like Scoot's maybe killing it in Portland. Williams just kind of stalls out, and like maybe some of the promise doesn't project over 70 games as it did in 50, or he's just young and he struggles. I think the worst thing that could happen here is in some way they end up in the wilderness looking for an identity, Brendan. I think that's where this is at. If they are in the wilderness this year and it's just like, I don't know what this is, I think that lack of clarity would be really tough for them at this point.
My brain just kind of stalled here for a second. This is the team that Kenny Atkinson was supposed to coach, right? Okay.
Yes, and I think
up.
Kenny Atkinson coaching LaMelo Ball and having a center like Mark Williams to me would give me some real good Brooklyn Nets vibes. And then I think with a higher ceiling if you build it correctly.
I mean, I kind of wonder what happens if like they go through this season. I think they could be pretty good, but whatever happens, and then they just they just call Kenny back up, and they're like, "Hey, the Warriors have everybody's over 35. Steve's not retiring anytime soon. Can we double the offer?" Like what Tom Gores did with Monty Williams. You know what I mean? Like, we're giving you fuck you money. You know what I mean? Like, just come coach our team. Because I think he's kind of the right guy for this. But anyway, I have worst case injury strike, Ball and Hayward again. Bridges isn't the same. Coming back. And the bottom falls out. And then in parentheses, I put again. Because the bottom has fallen out a number of times. But all that said, on the whole, I still have them going over 31.5. Charlotte has been over that number in 2 of LaMelo Ball's 3 seasons. Last year was the only time that they weren't. They were a 43-win team 2 years ago, as I mentioned, under James Borrego, with better health and more structure and an identity. They won 27 games last year despite awful health luck. Hayward, Ball, and Martin, and Miles Bridges all missed most of the year. And they still won 27, which that's not, nobody's gonna throw a party for winning 27 games, but that's only 5 below what they would need to win to hit the over here. And you would expect at least 1 or 2 of those guys to play the majority of the season. Miles Bridges has never had health problems, so that's kind of how I look at this. And I think that they will go over 31.5. I might even have them at mid 30s. I might have them way over.
I go over as well. I was not there originally. I've kind of come around just because they're adding the actual talent back in a big way. But, Brendan, hot take, I might feel better about the season in some ways if they did end up with the under, just because I feel like then the young guys would maybe be emphasized. Mm-hmm. And I do think this team needs another really high lottery pick. I think I'd feel better about them if they had one more blue chip thing. Because they had, the part of the reason they are where they are right now, I think, that's not really something you get into in a season preview fully, is they have, aside from Williams and LaMelo, I think done a really horrid job in the draft the last couple of years. It's been bad. It's been really bad. So they're lacking in terms of the talent I think they need to really maximize around. They have 3 guys that I really like, or at least 2 I really like, and we'll see about Miller. But I think there's a world where you maybe got to go chase some assets and play the upside game a little bit. Can you just get a first? Can you get a decent first out of PJ Washington in a trade, and then maybe you get the 7th best lottery odds, or if someone also wants Miles Bridges and Gordon Hayward gets a buyout, and you can reset that way. I don't think that would be the worst thing in the world.
Yeah, I do just want to close by saying, because we didn't talk about Brandon Miller a ton, and I kind of threw out I think it'll be a bad year. I think it is often a bad year for a rookie wing, especially one who's thin like he is. It's just hard for him to make an impact on the game. He's not ready to handle the ball. His shot may be fine, but it's not. I doubt he's going to be a 40% shooter right away. And defensively, what's your impact going to be if you can't guard bigger players very well, and you're not the team's best option to guard the point of attack either. I don't know how many minutes he gets, at least early in the season. So that's where I am with Brandon Miller. But long term, I think he'll be a starting caliber player, if not better. I think he's a good player. I just the pick was a question mark. His rookie season might be rough. And so for this conversation, that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, I think that's all fair. Okay, let's now move on to the Utah Jazz, one of the surprise teams in some way of last season. Maybe didn't hit their promise of the early part of the season, Brendan, but a team that I feel has a very bright future over in Utah with some of the players they have, and I think maybe most notably with all the assets they have to trade after moving on from Gobert and Donovan Mitchell. Most important player. I think this is an obvious choice. I think it's Lauri Markkanen. I think I just want to see how does he follow up last year? How real does last year feel? I think that's all worth exploring on a team that is, I think still in its building phase. I don't think this team is going to hit the gas just yet. I think the hipster pick is maybe Taylor Hendricks just because he's their most prized rookie, and it's like, okay, what does this rookie give them, and what does that add? But I went market, and I want to see how real some of what he did last year is, and I tend to think that it is pretty legit.
Yeah, that's why I kind of felt the same with my like best and worst case on the Hornets with not even including anything about LaMelo, and I think that speaks to my belief in him, and I feel pretty similarly with Lauri Markkanen. I don't think anything last year was flukish. I think the way that he can impact the game offensively in so many ways, he's one of my favorite players to watch in the league, like straight up. We talked about him a lot last year as the breakout was happening. We broke down, his rise. We broke down kind of, why it happened, what it meant, all that stuff. And like the more that I watch him, like he can come off the ball, he can screen, he can handle the ball, he can shoot, he can drive, he can just go up for a dunk because he's 7 feet tall. Like he just made good on literally every element of his promise last year. And statistically, like, yeah, he jumped up in a few categories, but I just think this is what he is now, frankly. Like I think he's going to be a perennial all-star candidate. And I think, he's probably not the type of player that's the best guy on a great team. But to me, like, can he be a number 2 or a really overqualified number 3? Yes, I don't even have much of a question there. And defensively, I think he's solid enough. I really do. Like they're going to probably start him at the 3 this year. I think he's fine. Like especially with Kessler back there and they switch a lot and everything. Like I just don't have a lot of questions. It doesn't sound like you do either. I agree he's their most important player because he's their best player. But I guess I almost just looked past him because I was like, yep, check that box. They got Lauri Markkanen, all-star season incoming. Then, what's next?
Yeah, I just want to see it again. I think just proof of concept I don't think is ever a bad thing. And I think defensively it's a good shot. I think we'll get to this in best lineup. They're going to have some lineups that are huge. Mm-hmm. And I think that's going to be good for him. I think if I learned anything from watching him up close a year in Cleveland. Mm-hmm. One thing that I think I didn't see from him in Chicago that I think is real with him is that even if I don't think he's someone I'm going to throw on your Tatums or someone like that in a playoff series, I think if you switch him onto those guys or he ends up on them for a stretch, he's not going to freak out and flame out and be a problem. He's going to be someone who can do good work there. And he is someone who I do believe can be someone that is like he's not going to be a guy you pick on in the playoffs anyway, right? Like I think he's someone who's going to just like, is he going to shut down someone? No, but is he someone that there's 6 seconds left on the shot clock, you're like panicking if you're the defense because that switch happens? I don't think so. Agreed,
and I think he just kind of knows how to use his size well in those situations and move his feet, right? It's like he's not going to block you, but he's going to get a contest up, and I would say the same thing even on guards. Like I think he's pretty comfortable, if it's like LaMelo Ball, who we just talked about. I think he's just patient and kind of in control in those moments. All right, my most important player is Walker Kessler.
Okay.
I think Walker Kessler might be further along than Rudy Gobert at the same stage. And I know those comparisons are kind of unfair and just like it doesn't really matter. Like it doesn't really matter how he compares to Rudy Gobert, who's no longer on this team. But it just, it makes sense because they're on the same team. But it also matters because you're talking about a multi-time defensive player of the year who you are saying, I'm saying Walker Kessler might be further along than that level of talent. Team shot. This was one of the craziest stats I've pulled since our season preview series started. Do you know what team shot at the rim against Walker Kessler last year?
I do not. I've not looked at this.
52%.
For fuck's sake, that's ridiculous.
12% worse than Utah's overall number. So when he was out there, he brought the opponent's field goal percentage at the rim down 12 percentage points. That's the kind of impact you're talking about. He's one of the best shot blockers in the NBA already. He's an elite offensive rebounder already. Shot 77% himself at the rim as a rookie. Got fouled constantly and can make free throws. And the thing that jumped the most to me watching back a game of theirs to prep for this is he switched all the time late in the year. He's guarding like I was watching them play Orlando. They had a lineup actually interestingly, which I missed until Steve Kerr brought it to our attention, where Paolo was the center. The Magic did in this game, and Markelle Fultz was at point guard. And Lowry was also on the floor, I believe, or Olynyk. And so they had that guy guard Paolo, and Walker Kessler was guarding Fultz. That was like the default matchup. I did not remember how aggressively they schemed around Kessler, even in year one. When you combine that with the rim protection, like you're talking about a generational defender if all of that continues to trend in the right direction.
So over under a year and a half before like the Utah Twitter mafia is like screen assists again? Like, are we going to be there with what? Like, I don't want that for him.
No,
but
it's
like,
got to
I
be
think that's
something
coming.
different with Kessler. It can't be. You can't pull the old tricks anymore. You got to do like contests on switches or something like that's gonna. It's gonna have to be a little more creative than that. They got to go deep on synergy or NBA tracking or something.
Yeah. All right. Player we'll be talking about at the end of the season. I'm gonna go with Ochai Agbaji, Brendan. I didn't want to talk about Walker Kessler because I kind of had a feeling you would, and I wanted to bring up some other guys and give ourselves a diversity of conversation here. I just think Ochai Agbaji is going to be like a really competent like NBA wing for a long time. I think he got really solid towards the end of the year. Did not really play like a rookie towards the end of his rookie season. I know he comes a little bit older, but like that's still I think notable. He's going to shoot. He's really tough. He can defend, even if I don't know how switchable exactly he's going to be. But I like him as defending, maybe ones, twos, and some threes. Mm-hmm. I think he's a good guy to pair with if they find a league creator type who's maybe not the best defender. I think he's someone who's going to pair well with any version of that they prioritize in the future. I think he's good connective tissue between Markkanen and the bigs as the wing there. I just like him as a player, and I think he's going to be one of those like non-all-star guys who NBA hipsters are like, who's like a good, solid wing? Ochai Agbaji.
Who'd you rather have, him or Max Strus in that fifth spot in Cleveland?
Probably Strus, just because he's a little bit more proven. The question is, what bigger too? The question that I don't. Maybe it's just Donovan Mitchell, but it's never been like reported out fully, but I've always wondered in that trade, like if the Knicks were really hedging on giving up some stuff, did the Cavs have to give up everything? Could they have just kept Agbaji?
Yeah.
Or like, and I think they may have tried this, and I get why Utah said no, but could they have like given up the pick and like kept Markkanen instead of LeVert? Like, there's just some questions about like
goes instead of Agbaji or something. Yeah. It's interesting,
look,
but
here's the Brendan, still an Isaac Okoro believer over here, by the way. Holding stock.
Salute to you for it. He's going to be your preseason guy to watch for Cleveland in year 4 here?
Yeah, obviously.
Okay, great. All right.
Who cares about Evan Mobley?
I like Agbaji. I wonder if he's not like just a better Malik Beasley.
I think he's going to be a better defender than Malik Beasley.
Uh-huh.
And Malik Beasley, at times, I'm just like, I don't know what this guy's doing defensively, and I don't think Agbaji is ever going to be that.
Not that bad, no. That's why, I did say better. But, like, I was surprised. Like, I mean, in one category, it's great that he has the quick trigger and confidence from 3. But that dude was chucking shots, and he made them. So, like, it's fine. But I wonder what does the evolution of his game look like, I guess, is my question. But definitely great rookie season, all things considered. I mean, you at least know now you have not a bust. You have a rotation caliber wing on your hands. And that just keeps adding additional cherries and sprinkles and chocolate chips onto the amazing summer that they had last year. It's like, oh, Kessler is a game-changing defender. Oh, Markkanen broke out. Oh, Agbaji, like, it's just insane. So, salute to Danny Ainge. But my preseason guy to watch, or guy we'll be talking about at the end of the year, Keontae George. This is purely a Summer League overreaction, I would say. We're all kind of there. We don't really know. I mean, and he was the guy, I would say, who differed the most between like pre-draft analysis to like what he showed at Summer League. There was a lot of questions about his decision making. There was a lot of questions about his shooting ability. Comes out, plays 6 Summer League games in Salt Lake City and Vegas combined, shoots 39% from deep, 32 assists to just 11 turnovers, has about as good of a summer debut as you could possibly ask for. But I think beyond that, I like him because I can see a version of him that fits with the rest of their team, maybe better than like a Jordan Clarkson or a Mike Conley did. Even obviously age-wise, you don't think those guys are going to be there for the long term. But even stylistically, George has better size than those two do, and a little bit more of an athlete than either of those guys. So, I don't know if George, Agbaji, Markkanen, Kessler as like your best 4 players is winning a championship, but I think he strikes me as somebody who will just fit. I mean, I don't know of a better way to put it. And if he can continue to grow, then maybe there's even more to his game than that. Maybe he is more of a switch defender. Maybe he is, an even better shooter than we think, or pull-up threes start to really be a part of his game. I don't know, but he really started a nice floor for himself. So Hendricks is a good one. I'm a little less familiar with him personally, so maybe that's why I didn't put him here. He could have easily been on our list, I think, but George is my guy.
Yeah, I think Hendricks is just. I think this team is in a spot where they have a lot of guys that I think I kind of like, and I don't know if any of them are going to hit the upper ceiling. But that's what all the assets they have to trade her for. Mm-hmm. Brendan, should I say the name that I texted you? Should I text you the name that I would love on this team? Should I say that, or should we save? Should I just not say that? The name I texted you that I kind of been thinking about with this team.
You can say it, but we should probably hold on a deep dive on it.
Yeah,
it's worth for how we think about this team, or how you're thinking about this team. I think it's
so. The name that I told Brennan that I think would be cool for them as a lead guy with the pieces they have is Josh Giddey, that kind of guy. If you have an imperfect, or Ben Simmons before everything happened, mm-hmm. You can their roster is malleable, and they have a really creative coach in Will Hardy and a really good development coach in Will Hardy, and that whole staff dating back multiple things out. They always really done well in development, it seems. I mean, mm-hmm. Jordan Clarkson got better there, and he was kind of a finished product when they made that trade for him. So that speaks well to, I think, the organization. You get someone like Giddey, and you have all the shooting, and you have all these switchable guys and competent defenders, and it's Giddey can just be kind of that kind of guy, can just be himself. And I think that could unlock a lot of talent if they don't go and get your more traditional lead apex kind of guy. Just been thinking about that because there's clearly going to be some kind of big move for this team at some point, and maybe it's probably not this year. Is it in 2 years? Whatever it is, there's going to be something here that unlocks something really interesting, and I that kind of guy would make some sense to me because their price also might be a little bit lower. Let's go to Brennan, best lineup.
My best lineup for this year's Jazz. I have Jordan Clarkson, who you mentioned, developed, has become a really efficient and kind of smart playmaker for this team rather than the sixth man I think he used to be. Ochai Agbaji, just give me spacing, give me effort, give me solid defense. You need him to develop. Lauri Markkanen, no-brainer. This guy is an all-star caliber player. He can do everything. He can fit any role. He has to be part of any great version of this team. I have John Collins.
Yeah.
He's on this team.
I think we have the same lineup, I think, Brendan.
Okay, great athlete. I think he can fill the Olynyk role and the Jared Vanderbilt role from last year's team pretty well. I think he can be a chameleon and do both of those things as a playmaker, as an athletic help defender. I believe in John Collins quite a bit overall. And then Walker Kessler. I think he's going to be one of the best defenders in the NBA again this season. I think he's going to continue to grow and develop. He can be versatile and protect the rim and do all that stuff even better than his predecessor in Rudy Gobert. And I think this five could be one of the stronger lineups in the league. I like the balance, and I like the blend of age and veterans. So give it to me. I think the Jazz are going to be pretty good again this year.
Clarkson, unorthodox one, but I think someone that you can do some stuff with, and is certainly, I think, again, has improved, and I think the offense they run gives him some aid in way other situations. We're not. Agbaji, we talked about him. Markkanen, we've talked about him. He's going to be the lead scoring option on this team again. That's going to be really fun. Look, John Collins, I'm curious to see what this looks like with him. I'm curious to see him in a new environment, just getting away from Trae Young, maybe make him feel a little bit better. Just getting out of Atlanta, give him some new shine on life. I think that's going to be interesting, but he's a good defender, can shoot corner threes when he's willing. Certainly, I think there's some overlap with him and Kessler as far as dunking, but I think he's good enough to figure it out if they can get creative with it. And then Kessler, obviously, he's got to be in there. I don't love the real lack of a lead kind of distributor in this team. I think I think this team's kind of lacking a little bit of that, but I think that they'll be competent enough just with the talent they have and the guys they have. All right, best case. Brendan, I think Will Hardy, for one, is a great coach. I think the talent he maximizes, I think, gets them in a good spot. I think this team could be close to, get close to 500 if things break correctly. Be around 500, be in the play-in race a little bit, and be a team that we're really thinking about is making a trade in the future to kind of elevate this.
I fully agree that they're going to be another solid team. I just think, to me, they can't be bad enough to tank this year.
No.
It's the same as last year. And so
barring an injury to like Lowry Markkinen and Kessler on day one, and then it's just like, okay, this is over, they can't tank. They're too good.
Yeah. Again, right? What I had was best case, Collins is a seamless fit. Kessler is a top half defense by himself in year 2. The offense keeps doing its thing, and the Jazz are even better than last year. Worst case, I had Collins is once again the odd man out. Utah misses having a traditional point guard like they had in Mike Conley, and the defense is still a work in progress.
All the same, and I think the other thing, I don't believe it's going to happen, but if Markkinen regresses in some way or doesn't work out in some way, and you're kind of left like a little more unsure, that's the case. And I think you do want to see something from some of your young guys, whether that's Abaji, whether that's Taylor Hendricks, whether that's Keontae George, whether that's Colin Sexton, who is still in this team. They have some guys that I think have something to prove here and are in weird spots.
So last season, and I said we were going to do this with the Hornets, and then I forgot it again. The last year's best lineup had Sexton in it. Do you want to know what last year's best Jazz lineup was?
Can I try to guess?
Sure.
Sexton and Clarkson, Markkinen, Jared Vanderbilt, Walker Kessler.
You had all of them, except it was actually Olynyk at the 5.
Instead of Walker Kessler?
Yeah, but it's kind of interesting to look at it that way because it makes me pretty excited about Collins and Olynyk together. I know, Vanderbilt's not fully like a rim protector, whereas I think that's more what John Collins' best ability is, but the idea of Olynyk being able to go back to playing the 5 and then having, Collins be his partner in that front court and then having Markkinen and Kessler be kind of tied together, I think they're going to have some fun combos. The Markkinen-Kessler combo last year was +6 per 100 possessions when it was on the court. Whenever those two guys were on the court, that's pretty good. So
this team's going to be
mixing and
huge.
matching that will be fun. Yeah,
it's going to be huge. They're going to bully teams consistently, and it's going to be kind of cool to see.
That's the other thing we didn't even talk about with Markkinen is he's a really good rebounder too. I mean, not really good. He's not like it's Dennis Rodman out there, but he's a good rebounder, right? So
yeah. Do you know who could have used him as being a good rebounder 4 months ago, Brendan?
The Cavs, probably.
The Cleveland Cavaliers, yes.
All right, I have over 35.5.
I do too. Easy.
They were a 39-win team statistically last year, but their actual win total was also over 35.5. I get that they lost Mike Conley and Malik Beasley and Jared Vanderbilt. Okay, those were not their best players. And there's plenty of guys who you could see improving, even with a roster that didn't change a lot. So even the young guys continuing to get better would make them even better than last year. And they already hit the over on this. I don't even understand this line. This is a weird one. It's like them, I guess, just Vegas or bettors just being like nothing Utah did last year was real, or we weren't paying attention.
Yeah, I think there's that. I think there's probably some of just I think amid all the positivity we have, I do think there is some uncertainty about some of all this coming together, and there is just there's no traditional lead star guy that we're really familiar with that would make you comfortable, I think, with everything going on here, right? I think that's probably what's missing more than anything else. It's just Markkinen's awesome. He's going to be an all-star candidate for NBA guy again, I think. But that's not a guy that your average, I think, betting public is who I'm just all in on? Markkinen. That's a top 10 guy, I don't think and then I think you look at the rest of the roster and it's really young guys, it's guys that we don't know exactly what they are. Even Sexton, let's say. I believe in Colin Sexton. I think there's still going to be really good basketball for him to come, assuming he's healthy. It's been a tough 2 years for him in that regard. I know the Jazz played a very cautious with him last year. We don't really know what he is, and he's already on a second contract. I don't think we know exactly everything that will work for him, and I think that there's some complicating factors to that, I think, with how this team is built.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, I just think, they have so many pathways to hitting the over, too, right? It's even if somebody like Sexton wasn't as good, okay, well, then they'll just play Clarkson more, and maybe, Keontae George comes along, and they don't even need it's just kind of there's just too much talent, I guess might be the best way to put it. And they're a good coach team, well-coached team.
A really well-coached team, and again, I do think the player development stuff with them is legit. I really think, I don't know what it is, and I don't know how we could, this is even an episode I think that would be that fun to do, or even totally feasible, but I think I would put them in my top 5 of teams I would trust to get the most out of a guy.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, it's, not maybe a conversation for the season preview, but you're just talking about Gideon trades and stuff, and Is somebody going to stay in Utah? Can they do it not homegrown? I'm curious about that.
They need to get Joe Ingles back from his Disney vacation in Orlando. And remember that when Joe Ingles signed with the Orlando Magic? Forgot about that until I started prepping for that one. And get him as an advisor. Be like, hey, Josh, you know what's great? Living in Utah. The mountains, amazing.
Yeah, I mean, it's not to say I'm not sitting here saying nobody would ever do that, but the past iterations of the Jazz very much prioritize we need to get draft picks and keep them. That's going to be our pathway to being great, and it's nice to have all these first-round picks, but unless Danny Ainge finds somebody who he can go get who chooses to re-up in Utah, which has never really happened, I don't know what their future is. It's a different type of bet on how to build this team out than what they've done in the past, and especially now that they have too much talent to be awful, it's going to be a kind of a tightrope walk, I think.
Yeah, but I think it should be a fun one to watch, and I would feel pretty good about them getting somewhere with this group. I think there is a ton to be learned here and a ton still to do, but it's quite fascinating. All right, that's going to be it for the Just Basketball Show for September 11th. I'm Chris Manning. That is Brendon Kleen. Thanks again to Dylan Heiser for his work on production. We'll be back at you later this week with more season preview work and content. The teams up next on our list. Pulling this up because I have it in the outline and I should have scrolled up faster.
I believe it's Orlando and OKC. Orlando and Dallas.
Orlando and Dallas. Luka Doncic, Paolo Banchero, Kyrie Irving. A lot of big names to discuss. And that preview, Joe Ingles, too. We'll talk to y'all then. Enjoy the hoops. At least the WNBA hoops because FIBA's over. Bye, everybody.